Good evening and welcome to another episode of Spotlight. As you all know, the increasing amount of COVID patients exceeding over 4,000 a day and COVID-related deaths exceeding the number of 200 per day. But what have been the cause for these COVID patients for dying? Is it pneumonia? It has been contracted, saying that pneumonia has been one of the main causes for COVID-related deaths in Sri Lanka. But with recent research done, it has been found out that pneumonitis can be a cause to getting pneumonia for COVID patients, and pneumonitis has been connected with COVID-related patients. And with many researches done, he has been a person who has found out that pneumonitis can be a cause for COVID patients to get pneumonia. And with his research, he has found out that there can be precautions taken to prevent COVID patients from getting pneumonia. And joining me for the discussion on Spotlight today, he's been on the Spotlight since the discovery of COVID with connection of pneumonitis. He is Dr. Channa Pereira, Consultant Judicial Medical Officer of the National Institute of Infectious Disease of Sri Lanka. Good evening to you, Doctor.
Good evening.
Doctor, so starting things off, first of all, I would like to find out, when did it all start? Basically, to do autopsy or post-mortem examinations related to COVID patients. When did it all start, and when was the approval given by WHO?
Yes, in fact, when it comes to the early phase of the global COVID pandemic, WHO did not recommend post-mortem examinations in deaths due to COVID-19. And we were one of few countries who performed autopsies in this context. We were compelled to perform the first ever autopsy in Sri Lanka on 5th of May 2020. At that time, the then Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jayasinghe, had a discussion with me since we had to perform that autopsy, and that was on 5th of May. Since then, up to now, we have performed over 100 postmortem examinations, full autopsies with exhaustive full histological examinations. So that's how all started.
Yeah, so when you say it all started, is it the same way that you would conduct a normal autopsy or of a normal deceased person, or is it different to the autopsy conducted for a COVID-related patient?
Certainly it's different, because now when it comes to a normal ordinary post-mortem examination, we don't wear all these personal protective equipments. But in context of COVID, I can still remember the very first autopsy. We were dead fear to perform this autopsy, and we wore all the personal protective equipments, took all the necessary precautions and did this autopsy. But when it comes to normal ordinary autopsies, we don't take all these precautions.
So does the identification differ from adults to teenagers when it comes to COVID-related?
No, the point is, now when it comes to COVID infection,
yeah.
I must say majority of the percentage of persons who get infected does not require a specific treatment, because I would say about 80% of the infected persons, whether you treat it or not, get cured. Only a minority get complications, and the majority being pneumonia, and the less percentage condition called deep vein thrombosis due to increased clotting ability, where you get the formation of blood clots in the calves, which get dislodged and lodged in lungs, causing death. And when it comes to all these complications, direct complications of COVID infection, I would say complications occur in persons who has comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension, bronchial asthma, smokers, alcoholics, with persons with immunocompromised state, obese persons, and old age. And also we have encountered some of the complications in pregnant women as well. So when it comes to young age, if they do not have any comorbidities, the possibility of getting complications is very unlikely. But we have had a couple of cases where the teenagers dying as a result of COVID infection complications, where they were apparently healthy without any comorbidities. When it comes to the lung findings of pneumonia or the condition that I told you, the pulmonary thromboembolism, where you get the lodging of clots in the lungs, it is the same. But the problem is you rarely see complications at young age.
Doctor, but before going into our topic today about pneumonitis, I would like, you were saying that when you had to wear a lot of protective equipment when you're doing autopsy, but how long a duration does it take to, like, say, from a deceased person to contract the virus to another person? Is there a certain time limit?
Yeah, certainly soon after death, if the person is infected with COVID, the possibility of getting infected is very high. With time passing, the virus starts dying, and especially if the body is decomposed, most of the viruses in the body die. But the problem is the dead bodies that we get, once we get a dead body, we put the body in a cooler container, refrigerator, where the virus tend to preserve. So all depends on the storage, duration since death, how the body is kept, whether the body is decomposed or not.
So coming to our topic for today, the most deaths occurred due to pneumonia or the discovery of pneumonitis. So how does all this relate, Doctor, with your new discovery of COVID and pneumonitis?
Well, I must tell you, it's not a new discovery, because pneumonitis is a known complication of lung in infections. But only thing is, we were able to find this is not rocket science. We were fortunate to find this phenomenon in this unfortunate global pandemic, since we started performing very early autopsies, and since we performed histological examinations. So if you perform an autopsy and if you perform a histological examination, you see. And I was fortunate, as I told you, in this unfortunate circumstance, to perform autopsies at the early outset of this global pandemic. That was the only trick.
So was Sri Lanka one of the first countries to start doing autopsies
Yes.
for COVID-related patients, Doctor?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So what will be the two differences now? Mostly we have been told that people, the COVID patients die basically due to the due to pneumonia. But now with this new word coming in with COVID, as you said, it's not a new thing, but it's newly related with the COVID, the pneumonitis. What are the two differences that will occur between these two?
Yes, as I told you, majority of the persons get cured when you get infected, and the commonest complication is pneumonia, which we all speak every day. And now what happens is, can I see the first slide? Yes. If you don't mind? Yes. This shows an alveolus, the small pieces which forms the lung, and in blue color you see the air in the alveolus, the space which occupies the air, and surrounding the circular is the wall. Wall is made of two types of cells which are called type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes. Now with the infection, we know that COVID-19 virus is very dangerous, it's very toxic. Due to its direct toxicity, it damaged this wall, the type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes. And also, when you are infected with this virus, the body tend to kill the virus by producing a large amount of different types of chemicals. They are called chemical mediators of acute inflammation, and the majority, the most important thing, I would say, a chemical called cytokine. It's one of. So these chemicals which is produced by the body to kill the virus is toxic to these cells as well. So the virus and also these chemicals cause damage to this alveolar wall. That is the condition which is called the acute lymphocytic interstitial pneumonitis, which we have identified at the early phase of this COVID infection. And this is actually, we have seen this is different to the other pneumonitis that we have seen, because you get early lung damage of these cells and they fall into the alveolar space, forming a shield like hyaline membranes which you don't see in other viral pneumonitis. So, this is the unique feature that we have identified.
So, pneumonitis is a viral, is it? It's the virus, is it?
Pneumonitis commonly occurs as a, yes, in this context, yes, this acute lymphocytic interstitial pneumonitis occurs as a result of the viral damage. So, then what happens is, when the wall is damaged, I must tell you this damage to these two types of cells that I told you at the initial stage, it's reversible, but with the time passing it becomes irreversible, and this wall is going to be a the damage to the wall predispose for the bacteria to come and grow, where you get the pneumonia that we are talking of. So, it's bacterial pneumonia is actually a secondary infection caused by the bacteria. So, initially it is triggered by the virus causing acute lymphocytic interstitial pneumonitis, then with the onset of the bacterial action, it is the bacterial pneumonia.
So, you want to go in for a next slide?
Yes, next slide. You can see this is the pneumonitis that we are talking of. You can see the spaces, alveolar spaces are still, they are free of the inflammatory cells, and the next slide is the larger magnification. You can see the nice unfortunate but very beautiful hyaline membranes at the wall of the alveolar septum, but still the spaces has air. So, when you breathe you get air, but it can't be transformed into the capillaries because of this shield of this inflammation, and also the wall is also damaged. Next please. Yeah, these are the, this is the presence of lymphocytes in the walls of the alveoli. Next please. Yes, this is again a larger magnification of the hyaline membrane. You can see it as a shield. This is the normal phenomenon, this is not the normal phenomenon, this is not the norm, and this shield prevents oxygen transforming into the bloodstream. This is again the inflammation. Next please. Yeah, here now you see this is a different patient. Now you see the alveolar spaces are getting filled with the pus cells, which are called neutrophils, and there are some cells called macrophages. This is for the medical people. Now this is different. Here of course the alveolar spaces are getting into the early phase of bacterial infection from the viral damage. Next please. Yeah, here you get the full blown pneumonia. This is on actually this death has occurred on the 14th day after getting onset of clinical symptoms. This is full blown pneumonia. This is much more later. At the latter phase you get fibrosis. Now what happens is, now pneumonitis can get resolved if you and it may go into a secondary bacterial pneumonia as a complication. Now even bacterial pneumonia can be treated. We have successfully treated these patients, and I would like to see that slide again. Now what happens is, most of the patients if properly treated get cured without leaving any damage most of the time, but if you are unable to treat them properly, the lung is getting scarring of the lung due to the presence of cells called fibroblasts. So this is the early phase of lung scarring, which is called fibrosis of the lung. This condition is very difficult to treat. Next please. Yeah. No, this is a different phenomenon. This is the condition that we are talking of. You can go to the next slide. Yes, this is again pneumonia. Yes, we will talk about this later. Yeah. These are the clots.
Yeah.
So I showed you the dynamic changes of complications of lung damage from the onset of pneumonitis early, and pneumonia, and then lung fibrosis.
Does pneumonitis have any stages, doctor? Like say, do they come in stages, like from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4?
Well, it occurs like this. Initially you get the reversible damage to the type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes. Then it goes into the irreversible stage. Then what happens is, there is a phenomenon called diffuse alveolar damage, where you get the damage to the type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes diffusely in both lungs, and then these damaged cells, type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes, they have no place to go other than falling into the alveolar space like a shield, the pinkish shield that you saw. So, these are the stages if you stage it,
Yeah.
but we have not decided to do that. I think I must try that today.
Dr. Kaminti, you did mention about when you're going through one slide that it was day 14 that thing had occurred during, according to your slide. But then there was a recent death that occurred with a teenage boy that was gone, 18-year-old boy, when he was cured and he was gone back, and then it was the 14th day that he was contracted and found out that he had pneumonia or a blood clot. And because you brought up the topic blood clot, that's what I thought of finding out. Is it similar to this stage of pneumonitis and pneumonia that occurred with this teenage boy?
Well, it is different. It is different, though the death occurs as a result of a lung damage. It's a totally different phenomenon. Now, all of us have identified that with the COVID-19 infection, you get the increased clotting ability. So, the blood is getting more thicker, and there is a higher tendency to get blood clots as a result of increased clotting ability. Now, when it comes to, I would like to see the next the slide that you we stopped. It is the same, but it's not from this boy. We have not prepared the microscopic slides of this boy yet. So, now we will leave this slide. Now, what really happened was, this boy was getting this COVID infection on 6th of August. Then he got runny nose and cold. He went to the GP, and GP properly advised him to go home and take the necessary treatment, hydrate himself and so forth. And on 10th he was getting fever, and on 10th the general practitioner has suggested him to get a PCR done. He has got the rapid antigen test, which became positive. Then again the GP has told him that boy, you can go home and get yourself treated, because you just rest yourself, because he was not having symptoms. So, he was staying at home, but on 14th, not the 14th day, on 14th his condition is getting bad to worse. And again they have the parents have taken him to the GP, where the GP has observed that the child is dehydrated. So, he advised the child to get admitted. He was admitted to Kalbowil Hospital, and on admission the child was dehydrated. This was reflected even by performing the full blood count, where his hemoglobins were very concentrated. Hemoglobin gets concentrated when there is less water, and also the PCV also reflects, higher PCV reflects dehydration. So, he was actually dehydrated. But all of us know that with COVID infection, when there is a lung damage, there is reduced oxygen saturation of oxygen. So, his oxygen saturation was normal on admission. It was 96 or 98. The same day evening it was normal. The following day on 15th it was normal. Even by noon it was normal. All of a sudden around 3:34 the child collapsed and died. And even if you treat the dehydration in the hospital, by that time all these clots were set in. Actually, what happened was, since this child died, the body from Kalbowil Hospital was sent to me for a full postmortem examination. Now, we can see the histological slide, where you can see it is not this child, it is from a different case, where you can see the blood clot. The irregular circular pink color is the blood clot in the lung. What happens is, in the calf veins you get formation, commonly it is the calf veins, you get formation of these blood clots, and then it stays. At some point it is getting dislodged, because blood circulates from these veins to the heart, and from the heart, right side of the heart, it should go to the lungs to purify it with oxygen. So, these clots getting dislodged, it can go through the right side of the heart, but it cannot go beyond the lung, because then what you have is small blood vessels. So, when it is lodged in the lungs, you die. So, this what happened in this boy. There was no evidence of pneumonia. There were no other comorbidities. Just child had been very sporty child, very healthy, but unfortunately increased clotting ability of this COVID infection, and also more than that, the dehydration has caused these blood clots, causing this condition called pulmonary thromboembolism, which is very unfortunate. That is why we always recommend, people to hydrate yourself. You know, when you are infected with COVID-19, you should follow the basic principles that we were following when we were small. We were given all these, first of all it's hydration, rest, but you should not be on bed or in front of the computer always, right? You should have slight walking in your room or at home, because otherwise that also increases the clotting ability of the calves. But you should not run and do sports if you are infected. So you should hydrate yourself. If this child was properly hydrated, I would say it's very unlikely that we would have encountered this death.
So there you go. That is a very good advice, that you need to make sure that you're hydrated. So drink a lot of water. That is one thing that has been told over and over again, especially if you're contracted with COVID-19. And another thing, doctor, what we've realized is, people intend to forget the previous precautions that they take, say, with the arrival of the Delta virus variant. They think that it's a different variant, that you do not need to do the previous precautions.
You have to follow the same precautions. The basic principle is, as I told you, majority of these people who get infected with COVID get cured with or without treatment. We have been taught that prevention is better than cure. In Western medicine, what we have to prevent this infection is, Western medicine is the vaccine. I think all of us should get vaccinated, there is no question about it. And also we should have social distancing, like you, we should wear a mask, and I am keeping that social distancing. And now the point is, those are the things that we can do in Western medical practice to prevent, because we do not have medication to kill this virus. We do not have antivirals in Western medicine. I do not know in other medications whether we have it or not, but the point is, there are only couple of viruses where we have antiviral treatment. But I do not think we will be able to invent an antivirus for COVID in recent future. So we are compelled to go for alternatives. What are the alternatives? There are very simple things that you can do. If you Google the effects of garlic, if you Google the effects of onion, if you Google the effects of ginger, if you Google the effects of coriander, all these have antiviral effect, and all these have antioxidant, and so many benefits that you can get just by having these food. These are the normal food that we eat, right? So why not to kill this virus by having this food, rather than going for hi-fi sophisticated stuff which we do not know.
Yeah, and obviously now with the various cures, like say various packs coming in, we're saying COVID related packs and all. So I think it will be much more effective if, as you said, if you go into the more common things like the garlic, the ginger, the coriander that we've known for so many years, even from small days that we take. So can these prevent a person who has the pneumonitis going into stages of pneumonia?
I believe so, because if the garlic, if these herbals or the food items that I mentioned you, if they have the antiviral effect, why not to eat them, and they have the ability to kill this virus. And at the initial stage, certainly when you have the full blown COVID pneumonia, I do not think they are sufficient to kill this virus, and there is no other medication to kill the virus as well. So prevention is better than cure. You start eating these, and they are not harmful at all. Now you mentioned a good word, the packs in pharmacies, and in so many kinds of packs, Western medical packs and also Eastern medical packs. I think I would say this has become COVID has become a huge medical mafia. I request the general public not to get trapped. What you should do is, you follow the basic principles. You should not take any medication without a proper medical advice, because you follow what I told you, the basic principles. If you get any complications, go to a doctor, because though I speak of these food items, if you get complications such as pneumonia and this increasing clotting ability, I do not think other than in a Western medical hospital, I may be unfair because I have no knowledge in Ayurvedic. I have all my respects to the Ayurvedic, that is why I am promoting these food items. But if you get these complications such as pneumonia and increased clotting ability, please go to a government hospital and get yourself cured, because for secondary complications such as pneumonia, you have to give antibiotics. It is not viral anymore. You have to give antibiotics, and we have antibiotics for bacterial infections, and if there is an increased clotting ability of blood, we have medications to make the blood thinner to dissolve these blood clots.
Doctor, another thing that we see is a lot of these COVID patients have been given a vitamin D tablet apart from a vitamin C tablet. What is the purpose, or what is behind giving them this vitamin D tablet?
Yes, this is a very important question, because now when I was small, we were taught that you stay outside so that the sunlight will make vitamin D on your skin, which is very correct. Now with this sedentary lifestyle, you will be surprised, we have a lot of sunlight, but majority of our population has a vitamin D deficiency, majority of the population, and it is well known, well recorded. So what we had to do is to overcome this vitamin D deficiency. You stay under the sun, you walk on the sun, which I do at our hospitals. I walk and I stay under the sun. Then you get vitamin D, and most of the young people have vitamin D deficiency. That's why, because vitamin D has some kind of a causing immunity against any infection. So that's why you have to give vitamin D. But that also used to be very careful, because if you give elephant doses of vitamin D, that will cause definitely liver toxicity. So all these vitamins should be given with the recommendations of a physician. If you are giving over normal doses of vitamin, if you are taking the normal capsule, you can take it over the counter and have it. If you are taking a large dose, certainly you get opinion from your doctor.
Doctor, coming back to pneumonitis and pneumonia now, obviously if we say a patient is contracted with COVID-19 and tested positive, so when does this pneumonitis start, or when is the time period that he can go into stages of pneumonia?
Yes, very important. Now according to our study, we have identified that you can get this commonly, you can get this pneumonitis on the 5th to 7th day. But there could be plus or minus couple of days, and this may go up to about 10th day. But at the 5th to 7th day, we have identified that it is very likely that you have only isolated acute lymphocytic interstitial pneumonitis without this effects of pneumonia. But it is possible, but it is very likely that you have only this isolated phenomenon. Then what happens is, subsequently when there is a wall damage, as I told you, then you are getting, the lungs are getting predisposed to the secondary bacterial infection that could occur from 5th day at any time, and commonly from 7th to 10th day and thereafter.
So yeah, because normally what we have noticed is a lot of patients that are being hospitalized are being released after the 10th day. So most of the patients said you can leave by the 10th day. So that is the time period that they look into this matter, is it?
That may be one of the criteria.
Doctor, so okay, you said 5th to 7th day is where you might get the idea of you having pneumonitis and then going into. So if once you're contracted with COVID-19, is it okay to start this Ayurvedic or these herbal foods that you mentioned? Can you take those during that period, say the kothamalis or the corianders and the ginger?
You can take, but what you should do is you should start taking it before you get it infected. You have it as your normal day-to-day food. I have been doing that from March 2020, and so I think what you should do is you start eating these before you get infected. But even once you are infected, before you get complications, still you can eat. Even after you get complications, certainly this will ease up to a certain level, but then of course you are late.
So I think that's why when people are in self-quarantine, the advice is given that you start taking coriander and all that. But then there is also a talk, doctor, that's saying having coriander daily is not good for your system. Is that?
Well, drinking coriander, I don't know whether there had been any studies. I had been drinking very frequently. Normally I drink a lot of tea as well. So tea came from foreigners, right? But before that our people had been drinking kothamali. So frequently drinking kothamali, I don't think it will have any adverse effects. but you should not drink Kottamalli and Venevalgata, I think, daily, but I am not an Ayurvedic practitioner, so I am not in a position to talk about it. But coriander with ginger, Inguru Kottamalli, is a very good drink.
Doctor, any advice that you would want to give, especially our general viewers who are watching this program, on what they really need to be advised of when they are, if they are being contracted by COVID-19 before they go into these stages of pneumonia?
Yes, first of all, you should get yourself vaccinated. That's number one. Number two, you have to wear masks and keep social distancing. You should not go to unwanted places, especially social gatherings where there are a lot of people. And other thing is, you should not touch unwanted surfaces, and even if you touch those surfaces, you should properly wash your hands, sanitize your hands.
Just to interrupt you, Doctor, now for example, can a fly or some species give you the coronavirus? For example, if a patient has used saliva somewhere, the fly goes and goes there and then brings it to some place, can anybody be contracted by that?
Yeah, theoretically it's possible, but these are not being reported, because now if there is a large amount of saliva with COVID, several flies from there taking in onto a surface, and from that surface, if I touch that, if I then touch the nose or the mouth, it is possible. These are hypothetical things. So that's why it is not neither proven or disproven. So anyway, there is a possibility. What matters is, if they bring the virus, why not bring it to the nose? But what you need to know is, there is a viral load that is required for the infection as well. So whatever it is, you should not touch unwanted surfaces. Even if you touch, you should do proper hand washing with soap and or sanitize your hands, and you should not touch your mucosal surfaces, nose, mouth and eyes. And other thing is, as I told you, vaccination. Now other thing is, hydrate yourself and start eating healthy food. So eating Chinese food will only compromise your immunity. Chinese in the sense, I am not talking of food of Chinese people, the Chinese rice I am talking of, yes. Right? Fried rice and this oily food. So start eating healthy food, which we have in our generations, which were eaten by our seers and archis, right? So start eating that. All these food items has very good nutritious value and also immune value. So that's the message that I can give.
Yeah, there's another thing. They say avoid sugary drinks when, especially at this time. Any particular reason for that?
You should avoid sugary drinks always, because these sugary drinks always, I mean, it is one of the causes to get diabetes, heart attacks and so forth. You should avoid sugary drinks always, and especially during this period.
I think we've come to some very good details on how you should get, we have precautions, especially with the ongoing pandemic. It's not only local, it's definitely global as well. So I think Dr. Channapera has described very well on what are the precautions you need to take, and especially with the discovery of pneumonitis related with COVID-19, how you need, what are the precautions you need to take, and what are the medical advice that you would like to get if you are a patient that has been made positive by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much, Doctor, for all the very important details that you have given us, and hopefully we will expect that Sri Lanka and the entire world will be COVID-free very soon.
Thank you, Kosala. Thank you very much.
With that, we come to the conclusion of another episode of Spotlight. I hope you gain a lot of information on the details that we discussed today on our episode of Spotlight. So till we meet again with another episode of Spotlight, it's good night to you.